Yo, what up, a-holes? Thank you for tuning into the Holistic A-Hole podcast. My name is Eric Levi, and I'm the Holistic A-Hole, the mommy blogger with balls, the inconvenient truth of health, and a certified nutritional therapy practitioner. What's up, y'all? How you doing? Hope you're doing great. Hope this podcast finds you in good health, great health, perfect health, prime health, superior health. Maybe you're just feeling aight. Nothing wrong with that, yo. I'm glad you found me here on the old iTunes transistor, and today I'm going to deliver a hell of a podcast to you. I'm going to make this worth your freaking time. There's so many great podcasts on the old dial to choose from. I'm so grateful that you've chosen to take a few moments of your day with me, and I'm going to fire you the hell up with this one, because today what we're going to do is we're going to talk about bad science. I shouldn't say bad. We're going to talk about science. That's bad. And we're going to talk about eggs, and we're going to talk about vegans. And we're going to put it all together in a nice little delicious podcast recipe that I'm going to whip up for you, stir you up into a frenzy. You're going to go into the office. You're going to start yelling at your coworkers. You're going to slap that croissant right out of your fat coworkers' chunky hands. You're going to be like, get your goddamn life together, Susie. Susie's going to be like, I have diabetes. I need that croissant. You're going to be like, shut up. You're wasting our goddamn Medicare dollars. No, that's just mean. Susie, I'm sure you're a nice person. But listen, a-holes, we got to take a goddamn stand right now. Because if we don't, who will? We're on the front lines, baby. So we're going to get into all that. But first, I want to just throw this out there. If you're a new listener to the podcast, first of all, thank you for joining us here today. And make sure you take a hot second and subscribe to the podcast. You got to do it. You made it here. You might as well make it here every single week when the podcast is released. So just hit the subscribe button. You know how to do it. It's right there, man. It's a big blue or green or red button in your player. Just tap it so that every time this podcast gets released, you're going to get it right there in your feed, along with all your other favorite podcasts. And if you haven't done this yet, yo, you guys, seriously, I need you to go onto iTunes. I know this is such a pain in the ass, right? But like this is how the algorithm works, right? They want to see that people are listening. I see the statistics. I know you're listening. But iTunes is like, we stupid. We don't know nothing unless you leave a review. So if you want to show this a-hole some love and keep us climbing the old charts, I would love it if you can go on iTunes, fire up your old computer, click the little iTunes tab, even if you have a Windows PC back in 1998, right? And you've got that big foofy hair and those thick rimmed glasses. Just go on iTunes, leave a 5-star review for the a-hole. It means the world to me. And the higher we get in iTunes, the more clout I got to go out to these influencers and these dope-ass people and be like, yo, can you be on my podcast? Because I'm reaching out like a mofo right now. And people are like, who the hell is this? I've got some really cool people coming on. I got some dope interviews scheduled here for the next few weeks. Gonna have some really good stuff coming up for you guys, but I want to take it to the next level. I want to get some next level people on this shit, you know what I mean? And so we got to spread the word, so I need your help. If you're in the movement, if you're working with me, if you're listening to me, if you're turning your friends on, I love you, but just go on iTunes, leave that 5-star review, all right? That's all I need you to do. And, am I asking for a lot or what? Go on to Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Snapchat, all at Holistic A-Hole. Friend me. Put me in your world. Put me in your social mediums. I got videos coming out on YouTube, the Holistic A-Hole YouTube channel. I got videos coming out on the Instagrams. I got Facebook posts that are lighting the social media on fire. It's all going down. I'm with you guys here. And also, if your health is a little, subpar, you can work with me. I can give you nutrition advice, and it's not just some baloney from some, dude with some sweet pics on Instagram. I'm an actual certified nutritional therapist. I can get down to the nitty-gritty. I can help you with your digestive issues. If you're not pooping for a day or two, and this happens all the time, I can help you with that. If you got heartburn, if you got GERD, if you got gastritis, if you got the farts and they smell like someone dropped a sulfur bomb up in your place, I can help you with that. And I got some really dope stuff coming up too. I'm going to tell a little story probably on the next podcast about how I don't want to use the word cure, but I've definitely put an all-out full frontal assault, and it's coming out quite successfully here on my own personal eczema. So if you're dealing with skin issues, I got you too. So hit me up, holistic.a.whole@gmail.com, and I'm going to deliver you some really great shit, okay? Now, this podcast is no exception because I've been fired up about this podcast for a couple days since I first saw a headline come across my Facebook feed about how eggs are going to kill you. And I post I don't know. I just don't post a lot on Facebook. I've had some full on like brawls on Facebook, and I'm just like, yo, I don't have time for this shit, right? I mean, I'm talking. I've had threads of arguments go on for days and weeks. Like, I'm not even joking, weeks. And I'm like, dude, I can't spend my whole life arguing with people on Facebook for no money. Right? If somebody threw down some money and was like, yo, I want to see the a-hole go at it with some fucking simpleton retards, I'll be happy to throw down all day, all night. Like, I can argue all day, all night. But look, it just gets exhausting on Facebook because nobody, and it could be Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever the social media is where you get in these arguments, nobody wins. There are no winners. You'll spend your whole day looking up facts and throwing it out there, and you'll do this, you'll do that, you'll make this argument, make that argument, and in the end, you gain nothing. So part of my evolution as an a-hole has been I got to concentrate my time to high value tasks, right? And unfortunately, arguing on Facebook isn't much. So I guess my point in this little rant is I don't spend a lot of time anymore on Facebook. But when I do go on, I like to scroll through, see what's happening. And I saw a study come through that said eggs are going to kill you. And the study was published. I mean, it's published in basically every news outlet in America. But the first one I saw was from CNN. So I was like, I smell a rat. And not just a rat, but like a smelly rat with fucking hemorrhoids and has been rolling around in poop and eating cheese pizza off the New York City subway ground. It just smelled rotten. And of course, this blows up the internet sphere, in the last couple of days amongst my tribe, Sorry, Native people, for appropriating your word, but this was my tribe of health professionals, and everyone's talking about it, right? Because we all know it's bullshit. We've seen this study come through so many times, and not this specific study, but the same idea. Cholesterol is going to kill you. If you eat an extra egg a week, you're going to die. If you eat steak, if you eat saturated fat, you're going to die. And as a former vegan, I was there. I believed this stuff, right? I got sucked in, man. The greatest thing I ever did and the biggest mistake I ever did was on the same day, the same moment when I signed up for Netflix. Because I would say Netflix has probably been one of the most influential mediums that I've encountered in my whole life. And I'm sure a lot of you can relate because you start getting down on some of those documentaries, right? I love a good documentary, especially a documentary that strikes me to my gooey a-hole core. And I'd watch some of these pro-vegan documentaries, and I was like, well, you gotta go vegan. And I went vegan. And, I've talked about this ad nauseum on this podcast. I'll continue to talk about it because it's a part of my life, And I thought I was doing the right thing. And I wasn't just a vegan. You can go back to the beginnings of this podcast. When I first started, I was still vegan. I was vegan up until really, a little less than a year ago. I mean, it's only been probably about 8-9 months that I haven't been vegan. And I was in it, right? And you could hear it on the podcast. You can see it in my videos. I could take those videos off of YouTube where I was a vegan. I was just doing the same thing that every vegan YouTuber does, which is just find confirmation bias science that proves my point and doesn't look at any context to anything. It's just, pulling abstracts off of PubMed and finding the reports, because you're going to find a lot of pro-vegan, pro-plant-based diet, anti-animal product stuff online, okay? And I got into it, and I know what that's like. I know what it's like to want to believe that something like saturated fat is bad for you. I know what it's like to think that like cholesterol is going to kill you, because we've put this out so much in our culture. It goes back to the 1950s when Ansel Keys comes back from Europe and he's like, look, I got 7 countries that are fucking dying because they're eating animal protein. They're, the 7 country study. And then people were like, well, there's like more than 7 countries in Europe. And he's like, yeah, but nobody cares about those. These are the 7 countries that we got to worry about because here in the United States, we're doing the same shit that they're doing and they're all dying of heart disease. And when you actually go through the science, you start to see like, man, that study was really fucking wrong. Even Ansel Keys himself, as he got closer, I don't know if he said this on his deathbed or like, within like a year or so of him dying, but he was like, yeah, that 7 country study was a little not right. And what happened was, I mean, I can't understand the context of why they did this back in the 1950s, 1960s, 1970s, but people jumped on it. And people jumped on saturated fat being the reason why people have, heart disease, because people just started having heart attacks and getting cancer and getting diabetes in this country in the 20th century, like the 1930s, 1930s, 1940s, 1950s, 1960s. Like people were just having heart attacks. That had never happened before. Like people had died. The life expectancy of a person in the 1800s, right, was, I don't know, like 30 or 40. That's because they didn't have modern amenities, right? One of my favorite jokes of all time is the Dave Chappelle joke on one of his new specials. Like, people used to die from shitting themselves, right? People used to die because they had the shits. And that's what was happening, right? You would die from things like consumption, and you would die from, smallpox and yellow fever and dysentery, right? Just your bowels just exploding, or your lungs corroding, or your liver just disintegrating in your body because we didn't have clean water, right? We used to drink water that animals used to walk and piss and shit in. In early New York City, people were dying from the same shit in New York City that they were dying from out in the country, because we had no sanitary water supply, right? Not to mention, our water supply was completely tainted because companies would dump runoff from their businesses into the water sources. The Collect Pond in New York City, they built a fucking slaughterhouse right on the Collect Pond, and all the runoff from the slaughterhouse goes into the pond water. Basically just dead animal carcass blood and pus, and then people would drink that water, right? So of course people couldn't live past 30 or 40 years old, right? But then the Industrial Revolution comes and we start cleaning some stuff up. We start to realize like, hey, maybe we should like protect the water source a little bit more. Maybe we should, start to create ways of preserving food. And I don't mean like dumping chemicals. I mean like creating refrigerators and keeping things on ice. And, even if you couldn't afford that shit, if you didn't have it, you would, salt your meat, and you would, you had ways to kind of preserve stuff so it didn't go bad. So you weren't eating meat that was fucking rotten, right? So people start living a little bit longer. Into the 20th century, all of a sudden, people start getting cancer. And the cancer rate used to be so low. It was such a rare thing to get cancer years ago, right? You died of this other stuff, and then you stopped dying of the other stuff. But now they started dying of cancer and heart disease. And now people have this diabetes thing, right? And so they try to just the human instinct is to try to come up with a solution. And at some point in the 1920s, they start to say like, okay, well, what's going on? Why are people dying of heart disease? And some people put the connection, they'd be like, look, you can't eat this fucking food that they're putting chemicals in. Right? This is when like the processed food industry starts coming up. You had some of these early doctors saying, "Look, it's the canning of the food, it's the processing of the food. What's going on with all of this weird like bread and wheat pasta and all this stuff? Like we're putting chemicals that we use in the battlefields in war into the food. That was the big thing after World War II. I mean, the mustard gas, right? Whatever that chemical was, the fucking Agent Orange, the pesticides, the DDT, all that stuff is ending up in the food because we have so much of it. We overproduced it in World War II. The nitrogen that they would put into the soil. Well, maybe it's not the nitrogen. I forget what the actual chemical was. But they're putting chemicals that were made for ammunition on the battlefield in war. They're putting that into the soil of the earth and then growing food. And then that ends up in the food. And then people start having heart disease and cancer and diabetes and chronic disease like they'd never seen before. And instead of looking back and saying like, well, maybe it's the actual farming practices. Maybe it's the way that we're actually growing and producing the food. They said, no, man. It's the saturated fat. It's one of the pure things about the food itself. It's the yolk in the egg. It's the protein in the meat. It's the fucking fat in the milk. It's all this shit. And they're like, that's what's causing heart disease. And, the press got it. The food processing companies fucking promoted it, right? It's much better for a company like Kellogg's or General Mills or Kraft or Nestle to say, oh yeah, totally, dude, it's the saturated fat. In fact, what you should be eating is this low-fat stuff because we don't put that stuff in there that's going to kill you. It's 100% definitely the fat that's killing you. And you can go back and you could see all the amount of money that was being transferred. This is when they start kind of realizing like, look, we can fund science and we can write the studies and we can hire ghostwriters and we could, pay these scientists, these researchers, these doctors. We can pay them really good fees to just put their name on a study. They don't have to read it. They don't have to do any work. And look, when you're a doctor, or you're a scientist in the 1960s, 1970s, 1980s, 1990s, and you've got all of this debt from med school or graduate school, and you're working every single day to pay that shit off. Maybe you have a little practice and it's bringing in some money. You're able to make a decent living, but you just got to straddle with this debt. And then a food company or a front group, a trade organization, a lobbyist, whatever it is, they come through and they say, look, man, we will give you $50,000 to give a speech or just to, not, you don't have to go that far, right? We're just going to give you $50,000. All you got to do is put your name on this study. We've done the work for you. Our scientists did all this shit already. But what we need is we just want you to be a part of it. It's going to look great for you because it gives you some authority and clout. You could use this to further your career. I mean, it's all gravy for you. All you got to do is put your name on the study. You don't got to do any work, and we'll give you $50,000 or $20,000 or $100,000 or whatever it was, And if you're a doctor in that position, of course you're going to put your name on that shit, right? I know, in the 1960s, 1970s, I fucking would have because we didn't know. We didn't know really until recently that this stuff was going on. It's not until really, the last, I would even say 5 to 10 years that average on-the-ground people could find out this information. Before that, we were just like, holy shit, look at all these scientists saying that saturated fat is going to give you cancer. So what you get then is you get just the foundation of all of this really confusing, bad science. This is why, dude, it seems like week or every other week or at least every month, there's going to be a headline that comes out that says, if you eat a pint of yogurt a week, you have a 50% higher risk of dying of cancer. And people read that shit, and they start freaking out. Right. Or if you eat a steak a month, you have a 12% higher risk of getting cancer. And even though that number means absolutely nothing, people start freaking out. And so this is what this headline is all about, right? The headline of 3 or more eggs a week increases your risk of heart disease and early death, says a study put out by CNN. And of course, CNN, oh my God, they're going to jump on every clickbait opportunity they can. Remember, companies like CNN, the New York Times, USA Today, I hate using this cliche term, the mainstream media, but that's who they are. And they're the mainstream media because they have the most money. They have a fucking board of directors. You know what I mean? They've got investors. They're funded by, I think, AT&T and these different they have big money at stake, so they need to make sure that people read their shit so that they can get advertising. They have to get numbers, right? So they got to put some real provocative shit out there. If this is new news to you, man, you got to fucking get out of your house and just go somewhere because this to me this is like common knowledge. Right? This is as accessible as just breathing. So CNN puts this out, and now, hey, confirmation bias to people that are sitting around going cholesterol causes heart disease. They're like, see? Goddamn, those people are just lubing up their cocks and jerking off so hard. They can't stop. They're like, yes, give me more cholesterol will kill you signs. Oh, God, I can't get it. Oh, I can't get it. I'll go again. Oh, give me some more confirmation. But oh, yeah, give me some more. They love that shit, right? And look, the other side, they're not immune to it. They love the confirmation bias. They love the studies that go, oh, a low carbohydrate diet will make you live to 130. Oh, give me some more of that. We all love that shit. We love the shit that reminds us that all the time and all the beliefs that we put in, that shit's actually true. There's so much gray area between both sides. It's just gross. Do yourself a favor. Get off of the bandwagon of whatever you're on, okay? In the end, let's just say a balanced diet of, pretty much equal amounts, equal parts, carbohydrates, fat, and protein is the ideal way to go, okay? But this is not the world we live in. We live in hyper-polarized fucking civil war, confirmation bias sides. So this study comes out, and it's 3 eggs a week. 3 or more eggs a week increases your risk of heart disease. Holy shit, Have you seen how many eggs are being sold in the grocery store? Have you seen how many people eat eggs? Have you ever been out for a walk in any city in the country, okay? And, noontime on a Saturday or a Sunday, and just seeing the sheer amount of eggs that people are eating. You go to brunch, the number one item on a brunch menu, omelets, 100%. I never even fucking knew omelets existed until I went to brunch. And I was like, holy shit, you do all this with eggs? You put all this stuff in eggs? This is amazing. I didn't know you could do this with eggs. You have made eggs the greatest thing in the world. Eggs were just fucking chicken poop, right? They came out the chicken's butthole, I think, or the pussy or whatever. And, the farmers would get them, and then you just ate eggs and you go out and till the fields. But now you go, you walk around the East Village, New York City, it's like there's eggs and fucking goat cheese and strawberries and mimosas and bottomless brunch. And people are eating eggs. To me, I would look at those people, if I believe the science, I'm like, y'all gonna fucking die. Jesus Christ, that's like a slaughterhouse if that many people are eating that many eggs, okay? You go into a grocery store, there's no warning sign that says, hey, this product will kill you. No, fucking people are eating eggs like crazy. Do you guys know, I think I talked about this on the podcast, but George H.W. Bush, for all that guy's faults and all that guy's problems, that guy lived to 93 years old. And on the day he died, that motherfucker ate 3 eggs, okay? And I don't think that was what killed him. Let's just take that as a study, right? George H.W. Bush, an evil dude who became president, dealt with an insane amount of stress in his life, probably worked with the worst people in the world, still lived to 93 years old, and on the day he died, he ate 3 eggs. So you can maybe make the point that, well, maybe he didn't eat eggs every day, maybe not maybe it was just like an occasional thing, and that day he died, it was like, well, I'm gonna die, so I might as well go out with a bang with 3 eggs, and then he fucking died. And a vegan would take that and be like, see, eggs kill you. right? Without telling you the guy was 93, without telling you maybe he ate eggs every single day. I think I read somewhere that was like his standard breakfast. So this dude's eating 3 eggs a day, lives to 93 years old. If you're eating 3 eggs every day, according to this study, you should be dead before you're 50. You should not live to your 50. You should be on a fucking respirator in the hospital. Where's my egg, man? Just give me a goddamn hard-boiled egg. No, man, you got to stop. This is a problem for you. People should be having interventions like, dude, you got to lay off the eggs. You got to let go of the eggs. Where's all the interventions? Where's all the love? Where's all the compassion from our society? Looking out for each other. Hey, man, let's get off the eggs. No, because we're not that dumb, you know? So this study comes out, and basically what it was a prospective. Jesus Christ! Got to sign into my. I got a professional operation here. I have the science all up on my shit, right? This was a prospective study, a meta-analysis. So basically, what they did is a prospective cohort study. And so what they did is they pulled 6 different studies that had basically measured people and the amount of eggs they ate, and it was close to 30,000 people that were involved in this study. And, you know, what they found over the study lasted close to 30 years, I believe. Yeah, it was between 1985 and 2016. So over 30 years, 30,000 people over 30 years. And in that 30 years, they were measuring people who were eating eggs versus people who weren't eating eggs. And I mean, of course, people died who were in the study. In 30 years, from 1985, no less, to 2016, I think a couple thousand people died. There were 5,400 incidents of cardiovascular disease amongst the people that in these studies, right? And 6,100 all-cause deaths, okay? Bro, it was the 80s. People were doing coke in the middle of the day. People were drinking full-on beers and driving with the beers in the coffee cup in the car. They'd get pulled over. They'd offer the cop a Budweiser Red, right? While fucking chain smoking cigarettes, and the cop would be like, "Hey man, just make sure you stop all the way at the next stop sign." Dude would be like, take a fucking a key bump, you know, he'd be like, "Thanks, officer," and then he'd drive off. This was the 80s, bro. He'd be blasting Motley Crue, Dr. Feelgood, you know? I mean, this was the 80s, okay? Not to mention the AIDS, right? Crack, you know, the 90s. I mean, fucking all kinds of shit, okay? Oh, but 6,100 people died out of 30,000. I mean, yes, you're going to die. People are going to die in these studies, right? And, you know, what they find is that the people who ate a half an egg a day increased their risk of dying by like 12% or some crazy fucking number. And who even knows what that number is, right? Because in these studies, you know, you can take these numbers and you can it's like, what are you comparing that to? What is the number you're comparing that to? I talked about this a couple podcasts ago with these skewed like cholesterol studies. This is another example of one where it's like, are we talking the comparison of the whole population, or are we talking the comparison between, you know, the people that just didn't die? Right? There's a lot of context in these numbers that they're not talking about. Okay, and also, you know, they can take into consideration like this all-cause mortality thing, like, oh, you know, we're measuring people who have, you know, heart attacks. We're taking in consideration people who might die from a car accident or something. You know what I mean? Like, they're taking that into consideration. But you know what they're not taking into consideration? They're not taking into consideration what else people ate with those eggs, right? You can have an egg and then maybe you drank a fucking pint of whiskey, you know? Maybe you had 3 eggs a day and maybe you smoked 12 cigarettes. Maybe you ate 3 eggs a day and you worked on Wall Street for 30 years and had insane amounts of stress, okay? Maybe you ate 3 eggs a day and you were just so depressed you jumped off a building. You know, it's like a million There's a million cofactors. Maybe you ate 3 eggs a day and you had a French roll every time, right? There's so many confounding factors that you can't possibly take into consideration, especially with the way that they do these studies, like these epidemiological studies. In this case, a food frequency questionnaire. I don't really know how many of those they put out. I think it was pretty low. Like, it wasn't a lot. And they're asking people to mark down what they ate a week ago, a month ago, a year ago. Can you they're asking people what they ate before. I can't tell you what I ate yesterday. I can barely tell you what I ate this morning. And I'm pretty sharp, right? As a nutritional therapist, one thing I do is I ask people to give me a food journal. And this is like very hard for people to do. This is what I'm finding out. It's very difficult for people to just write down what they had to eat. I want them to record, what did you eat? Because what we're trying to do is we're trying to see like symptoms to the food you ate. So we can see like what's going on with your gut, what's going on with your sugar, why are you having these symptoms, right? And people cannot do it. It's the hardest thing I ask people to do. And it's really the easiest thing. It's like if you eat something, just write it down, write down the ingredients. But people, they just don't do it. And so, and I'm not basing, $1 billion industry off of my food journals, right? I'm just trying to, fucking see like, why are you experiencing gas? You know what I mean? But these studies, these epidemiological studies, are based off of these food frequency questionnaires where they ask people, hey, what did you eat last week? What was your diet? Did it include this? Did it include that? And I don't know if it asked, did it include this? Did it include that? But, they're asking people to remember shit that's very difficult for people to remember. Maybe somebody might be like, yeah, a week ago I had, I had eggs like 2 days. Who knows? How many eggs? Right? What was the source of it? Were they free range? Were they, industrially produced? Who knows? You know what I mean? Maybe you go buy organic or what you think is organic, but it's like one of those like kind of like shady organic where they're like, yeah, they're free range because we open a window in the fucking chicken death camp coop for 5 minutes a day, and that counts as free range, So maybe they're not actually eating shit that's high quality. Like, so many factors, right? And that's what they're basing this off of. So, yeah, it makes for really bad science, but it makes for real juicy headlines that get traction. I.e., I'm talking about it right now, right? So, I mean, this is just bad science at its absolute best. But of course, you've got these vegan doctors and you've got the vegetarian, scientists are like, see, look, the case closed. You know what I mean? And it's like, no, the case is not closed. In fact, the case is way more suspicious at this point because why? Who paid to have this study done? What was the point? What were you like? What were you studying? Why? Why would you put together such a poorly built scientific study? What are we paying scientists to do at this point? To just measure baloney, really? Look, I am not so devout of a non-vegan that I am not willing to entertain the idea that maybe saturated fat is not great for you, okay? But I've yet to see indisputable evidence that supports that, and I've yet to not see those studies that come out that vegans will say is indisputable. I've yet to see those supported to be basically bulletproof. Because in a food study, in a study that's trying to isolate one food item, when people's diets are made up of a variety of shit, you cannot out in the world make the claim that one food thing is going to kill you, especially not since we now understand the role of genetics in food, right? Like maybe eggs are not good for you. Maybe because you have the MTHFR gene mutation or SNP, right? Maybe eggs are not good for you because you have a food allergy to eggs, whatever it is. Right? We're all individual. Not to mention, what is your mineral balance? What is your blood work? What is your blood glucose? Eggs aren't adding to your blood glucose. So again, so many factors that go into these sorts of things that, a company, a news organization, they're not putting that out. Why? Because people read on a fourth grade level, and they can't, all the stuff I just told you, this was like a fifth grade level podcast, okay? That's a little much for people to understand. Context, it's too much for people to think about. Context does not get you clicks. Context does not make a board of directors happy. Putting out fucking shocking shit that's going to make people literally drop eggs. It's going to make people drop eggs on their kitchen floor. Yeah, that's going to make some sick dough, So as this study goes around and it's lighting the fucking blogospheres and the websites and the social media news feeds on fire, you have to remember all of these things, which they're not telling you, okay? Now, this brings me into the other thing I wanted to talk about on this podcast, which is the vegans, okay? Look, man, I have a lot of anti-vegan stuff on here, but I really do understand the vegan community. I understand why they are who they are, okay? Because I was one of them, so I've been in there, But man, the longer I'm out, the more I see this isn't about diet. This is about religion. This is about a set of beliefs that you've basically hitched your oxen to, and you're like, we're fucking riding this bitch all the way through the Oregon Trail. We're riding this bitch all the way to glory. And man, it's not just one of those things where vegans are like, hey, you should eat vegan because it's better for you. They're like, no, you must eat vegan because you're contributing to holes in the ozone layer. You're contributing to the death of children. You're contributing to the higher rate of fucking, hospitalizations and all this shit. You're making the world a worse place. And, for instance, some famous vegan blogger and social media personality named Ravana, in the last 2 weeks came out and said she's not vegan anymore. And holy shit, you go on my YouTube feed where I have a lot of YouTube vloggers on there, they're all shitting on her. I've seen this with multiple vegans who have left veganism. They start pulling out again more of these science abstracts they're finding on PubMed. Abstracts, by the way, those aren't the full studies. It's just like a paragraph summarizing what happened in the study. Sometimes they'll put a little of the methodology of how they did. You can't even get a hold of a study. You can't even try to grasp what a study is actually talking about unless you can read through the whole fucking thing. And those things are long and they're a pain in the ass to read, right? But, I see the vegans, they pull the abstracts off the internet and they're like, see, look, she's saying this girl left because she had SIBO. And she's like, I think the veganism was causing my SIBO. I think I needed some animal protein. And all the vegan YouTubers are like, no, she's full of shit. She could have done this on a vegan diet. Really, dude? You're not her. I'm going to trust her judgment over her body. Maybe she's wrong. Maybe she's not, educated on the subject. But this girl was talking about how she'd been a doctor after doctor trying to figure this shit out. And she's a health blogger, so I'm going to guess she kind of has some awareness of her body. I'm just going to take her fucking word for it that whatever was going on in her body, she probably had the best grasp of it. But not according to the vegans. According to the vegans, they're like, no, she's wrong. Satan got a hold of her, Repent. That's what this shit is. So to me, it gets to the point of being like religion. So this is kind of what fascinates me about the vegan. This is my guilty pleasure is watching vegan YouTube and to see how ridiculous it is. And one of my favorite vegan YouTubers is Vegan Gains. And this dude he's fun to watch because he's so hardcore, He's like the fire and brimstone vegan. And he's got a lot of issues, got a lot of mental issues. And he was debating this dude, this carnivore kid, who, by the way, is just a jackass. This dude is a fucking joke. His name's Frank Tefano. And he's like a kid who's like a carnivore, and he's hitched his wagon to that thing. Not, he's done the vegan thing, radicalization of the diet on the other side. And, they had a debate a couple months ago, and Vegan Gains he wiped the floor with this kid because this kid just he knows his shit. He's quite well read on a lot of this stuff, but he's just not good at explaining it. And I think he's so far in the hole that he can't really be objective about it. And so what you get is this inability to truly understand the science and make sense out of the argument, and to really to be able to, I think, debate somebody, you have to understand their argument too, right? You have to understand where they're coming from and be prepared. And this kid does not prepare for these debates. And so this dude Vegan Gains goes at this guy. He's one of the bigger, carnivore vloggers, and he just wipes the floor with him. And so they had another debate. This one was moderated by another, kind of keto, pro keto, pro paleo diet guy. And again, this kid just did not prepare. He just, was not saying shit correctly. And I just watched Vegan Gains just steamroll this dude. But I will say this kid made some good points. And because what happens is a lot of these debates, if you ever watch them, they turn into my study's better than your study. And it gets so into the weeds and nerdy that I enjoy it because I love that sort of thing. But it can be real. In the end, you're like, what did we just do? We just pulled up PubMed studies that literally prove nothing, right? All the shit that I just spent the first half hour talking about on this podcast with how skewed these studies are, that's what these debates are based off of. And so I'm watching Vegan Gains just mop the fucking floor with Frank Tufano. But Frank actually made, I couldn't watch this for too long. I watched maybe the first 10, 15 minutes of it. And Frank actually made a good point, because what happens is Vegan Gains starts coming up and he's like, see I forget the actual study, but it was something about the Association of Dietetics and Nutritionists, whoever that is, they said unequivocally cholesterol, serum cholesterol is linked to a higher all-cause mortality or something like that. And so what this dude Frank Tufano did is he actually poked a very interesting hole in this argument. And had he exposed this more, he would have won the debate. The debate should have been over right there. He looks at the authors and he's like, you see, he starts pointing out the author. He's like, you see this author right here? He's like, does a little Google search and is like, oh, sure as shit, this dude is associated with the Seventh-day Adventists. And then he finds another author on that same study, and that dude was associated with the Seventh-day Adventists. These guys are all these are the pro-vegetarian, pro-vegan, religious whack jobs. And the point that he was making was, look, man, these studies, these pro-vegan studies are, a lot of times they're funded by industry, big industry, the food processing people, the Kellogg's, the General Mills, the Nestle, the Kraft, the packaged food companies, because they don't want people eating meat. They want people eating their shit. If you eat less meat, you're going to eat more of the packaged food stuff. You're not going to eat eggs and bacon for breakfast. You're going to eat cereal and oatmeal and Pop-Tarts. That's what they want, You look at these new food recommendation pyramids and My Plates and all that stuff. At the very top, the big chunk they want you to eat is fresh grains, fruits and vegetables. Fruits and vegetables are great, but fresh grains, they don't tell you how to soak them or nothing like that. They're just eat more fresh grains, corn, soy, wheat. And then a little bit of meat and dairy, maybe an egg a week, and maybe a little quart of milk or something. And the Seventh-day Adventists, they're pro-vegetarian. And then when you start to find this connection between the processed food companies and the Seventh-day Adventists, you start to really question well, what is going on? You start to see the religious aspect to it. They're really pushing that narrative hard. And what Frank says is, he goes, look, man, what Vegan Gains comes back and says, well, what is the point you're trying to make? You're trying to make the point that these doctors are vegan, so they're going to have a pro-vegan bias. He's like, well, you can say the same thing about meat eaters. If you have a meat-eating scientist, they're going to be pro-meat eater. And the difference is in the context, right? If most people who eat meat, they don't give a shit. Right? There are people who are just savages and they'll put their bloody meat on social media and be like, see, I'm fucking eating dead animals. But for the most part, most most people who eat meat, it's just like a part of their diet. It's not like a mainstay. They're not fanatical. They're just like, I like to eat burgers. I like to eat steak. I like to eat chicken. That's what I do. But vegans have a more religious background, especially if you're a Seventh-day Adventist, right? You have more of a incentive to push a pro-vegan agenda, because not only is it your religious right, it's also the fact that you're being directly connected to the food processing companies. So what starts to happen now is you start to see this, this kind of religious aspect poking its ugly head into veganism, okay? Especially when you start getting into rhetoric like, if you're not a vegan, you are killing the environment. If you're not a vegan, you're killing God's creatures, animals, okay? We need to stop farming cows because cow farts are gonna cause the world to disintegrate or die in like 12 years or whatever that line is, okay? When in fact, when you actually talk to people who are farmers, regenerative farming is a much more effective way to do this. Actually caring for the topsoil and using animals to feed on the grass and refertilize it. This way you build more greenery, you build more grass, you build more plant life that physically, literally sequesters carbon. It traps carbon inside. This is how we're going to do farming in this 21st century. That's going to actually make it so that the world does not fucking explode or spontaneously combust or whatever. Or God's going to come down and be like, you have eaten too many cows, fire and brimstone, pew, 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 and we're all dead in 12 years, right? That's not going to happen if we start moving our farming practices into this more reliable source, okay? So my point is we got to chill. We got to chill with this shit, right? If you're an a-hole, I know you're better than this. I know you're good. And you see this stuff and you're like, yeah, that's bullshit, right? Eggs are not going to kill you. But who is making it so they're trying to convince me that eggs are going to kill me? Why do you think that? Why do you think that? Do you think you're really more worried about the world fucking ending than I am? Do you really think that? Do you really think that 19-year-old, fucking hippie whose parents are still paying their insurance, you really think that you're more concerned about the world ending than I am just because you don't eat meat? By the way, you're not eating meat, you're replacing it with high carbohydrate diet. You're dealing with anxiety, skin issues, gut issues. You're dealing with a lot of shit, okay? Simply because you refuse to entertain the idea that the things you decided to believe a couple years ago might not be true. You refuse to believe that maybe there's some documentaries on Netflix that just, I don't know, they're not correct, right? Because we've just imprinted it in our minds, and it continues to be imprinted by the mainstream media because they also have funding from big corporations that is telling us this information. Right? Now, on the other side, you have like the pro-meat lobbies. You got the Dairy Council, the Meat Board. You've got the Ranchers Association. I mean, they're no, they're no patron saints. Like, they're very guilty of doing the same thing in that side. Believe me, when I was a vegan, I really took a hard look at a lot of these studies, and they were funded by people who were, or they were funded by, by the big meat people. But in the middle is where you want to be with this. In the middle, that's where the common sense is where you say, okay, I can have a balanced diet. I can have animal products. I'll be fine. I'll have fruits and vegetables. I'll be fine. Look, you could even have a little bit of grains and a little bit of carbohydrates. It's okay, right? Just don't make either any of these things like the mainstay of your diet. Low fat, high carb, low fat. It's all crazy. It's all wrong. Just go, 50, 50, 50. I know that's not 100%, but you know what I'm saying? Like, just be you and eat to your genes. Find out what your genes are. Find out the physical nutrients you need in your diet to make it so you thrive and you don't die of cancer or heart disease. This is the conversation we're not having. Only the smart people like us are having these conversations. That's why I love you, a-holes. That's why I need you to go leave a review on iTunes for me, yo. Go do it. Do it right now. Hit pause. Hit pause on the podcast. Go to iTunes. Leave the 5-star review. Just do it. You can just hit pause. I'll be back. I'll be here. I'm waiting for you. Did you do it? Thank you. Thank you for doing that. I love you. Out of all the a-holes, I love you who just left that review, that 5-star review on iTunes, I love you the most. Look, guys, this has been great. My equipment is about to die, so I got to get off of here. But you know what I'm saying. I think this was a good one. I think we really kind of hashed out some of this shit. And look, if you agree with this, if you know that these studies are bullshit, next time you see one, put it on your social media and be like, yo, think with your right brain. think with your common sense, okay? A half an egg a week is not going to kill you. It's never killed people in the history of humanity. It's not going to kill you. Go out and eat an egg and see if your heart rate rises. See if you start to get sick. See if you start growing a tumor, in your brain or your butt or your liver or whatever. You're not going to, okay? Eat some eggs. It's okay. And like I've said before, eat the egg yolk. Don't be afraid of that shit. Eat the egg yolk. Eat the animal protein. Eat the animal fat. It's going to be okay. Balance it out with some fruits and vegetables. Put in some beans. If you want to have a little bread, a little's okay. Just don't go crazy with it, right? If you want to have a fucking bowl of ice cream, yes, that's terrible, but it's okay. You're going to live. Don't eat thinking that a thing is going to kill you. In fact, if you think like that, it's only going to cause more stress. And the stress will kill you. So thank you guys so much for listening. I really appreciate it. Week in, week out, you all are the bomb. If this is something that you believe in, if you think I'm preaching the truth, please share this with your friends. Share this with people you need to, who need to hear this message. And keep listening for more podcasts from the Holistic A-Hole. I'll catch you all in the next one. Peace.